It was a momentous day in Parliament. If you missed it, let me sum it up for you. There was a lot that was expected today in the House. And, well, the Speaker came up with a decision that, to all intents and purposes, had calmed a few nerves. But has it really? What really happened? Of course, a lot was riding on what he would have said today, on the back of the decision that he himself triggered, announcing that 4 seats in the House have been vacated. But when he showed up today, and we were looking at how he will react to the Supreme Court's own ruling on the subject that effectively stayed his hand in the particular matter, he says he's adjourning the House indefinitely. And that doesn't really satisfy any side of the House, either the MPP or the minority side, but does a neutral maneuvering out of a complex quagmire that, in fact, the Parliament itself was placed in, placing the judiciary firmly against the legislature. So that was his announcement today. So if you're just coming to this conversation, Parliament has been adjourned indefinitely. And nobody knows what is going to trigger a recall of Parliament, because the Speaker did not quite say if this is going to be determined after the outcome of the Supreme Court ruling or by some other factor. But one of the things that we learned tonight, even speaking to the two sides of the House in terms of leadership, those who were in conclave with him before he came out to make this announcement, is that he says he wants to consult a bit more, because there are individuals in society, statesmen, eminent people he needs to consult, because of this democracy was pushed to a brink of a constitutional crisis. We need to pull back. And so he wants to have a conversation, and that may determine, once he's done, that will determine if he then decides to recall Parliament. But we know also tonight that the minority side are already beginning to gather signatures to compel him to recall Parliament, because they can do that under the Constitution. Once you gather more than 41 votes, you can compel him to recall Parliament. He has no say in the matter once the signatures have been accumulated. We understand that's something that the NPP side is currently doing to get him to recall Parliament. And so we keep an eye on that. And we know that this really is the background to what has happened. He also confirmed today that he indeed received the ruling from the Supreme Court. And many had said in the past that, well, they didn't know about, some MPs on the NDC side have said they didn't know about the Supreme Court's ruling, and so the Speaker is not bound by it. But today, he acknowledged that he has been served, and the Supreme Court was clear in that particular ruling that those 4 MPs must be allowed to represent the people that indeed came to Parliament to represent on the back of the 2020 elections. Also tonight, another thing that has happened, another development in this man here is the Attorney General. And the Attorney General has also gone to the court, because, you know, he was part of the suit, by the way, as a defendant in the particular matter, after the majority leader, Alexander Fenyo-Markin, rushed to the court to try and stop the Speaker from declaring those 4 seats vacant. Now, in that particular matter, the Attorney General has filed his own case in the matter, and he says a few things. He's challenging the Speaker's declaration, declaring those 4 seats vacant, and he makes a few points. But primary among the points he makes in the statement of case before the Supreme Court is that when that constitutional provision, 97, talks about vacating your seat, if you decide to, in the case as we have it, you are on a political party's ticket in Parliament, and then you decide to go independent, well, and you want to remain in the House, his interpretation of that is that remain in the House does not apply to the current life and term of this Parliament. It is to a future Parliament that is yet to be, and so you cannot apply what is yet to come to this particular life of the Parliament. And his point is that it doesn't affect them in this Parliament, and so their seats cannot be vacated, although it is a matter of fact that these 4 MPs, in fact, 3 of them, 2 on the side of the MPP, 1 on the side of the NDC, have decided to run as independent. That's fundamentally one of the key points that the Attorney General is making. And here are these MPs in question, and all of them, as we know, have gone, 2 of them have gone independent, including him. His case, I haven't heard much about, because I believe it's open and shut, because he came in as an independent. And the Constitution is clear, if you come in as an independent and you decide to run on the ticket of another political party, that automatically means you vacated your seat, right? And we'll see how that plays out. But there's another thing that has come up tonight, that in fact, in her case, she has had to issue a statement to deny that categorically, because it has been suggested that she may have changed her mind, rescinded her decision to go independent, even after she's filed and picked up forms and the EC has accepted her nomination forms and she is now formally an independent candidate. It has been suggested that on the back of all the controversy and the party reaching out to her, she's decided to sort of backtrack. She has come out categorically to say that isn't true, and she's still running as an independent candidate in that same constituency, this time as an independent candidate. So clearly there's a lot happening, you can imagine, in the MPP to try and get these two to back off if they do matter close, because then they will still have their members in the House. That means they will have the numbers, and this controversy will currently be dealt with quite emphatically. But this is a constitutional provision in question that it has now been at the center of interpretation of the Supreme Court. First of all, if you come to Parliament in Party A, on the ticket of Party A, and then you decide to then move to Party B, Constitution says you should vacate your seat. Second, if you go independent, whilst you had come in as on the ticket of Party A, the Constitution again says you must vacate your seat. Then the second bit there is that if you came in as an independent, as in the case of the former MP, and then you decide then to cross to Party A or Party B, that isn't the reason why your people elected you. Parliamentary, protecting the sanctity of parliamentary representation, right? And so the Constitution again says you vacate your seat. So these are the various scenarios, and at least those two, and this is not all, there are others, but those two that are in question and become a subject of some significant controversy, the Supreme Court will interpret these two when they sit on the substantive matter before them. But there are other provisions in there that, of course, also talks about parties merging at the top and the Constitution deciding that that's what they want to do. The Constitution says it doesn't affect the MPs in question. 3 major decisions in 6 days. First one to note, Speaker declaring those 4 seats vacant. And then the other key one that then followed shortly after that, 24 hours later, it is the Supreme Court stay of execution. And that is really what set us up for this possible constitutional crisis that I believe have been averted, or have it really? My guests will weigh in on that when they sit for a conversation pretty shortly. The Speaker now, having been compelled to adjourn by his own words because of the questions around the composition and constitution of Parliament, he wants to adjourn this indefinitely, buy him some time to consult more broadly, and then possibly recall Parliament. The big decision, though, and this is the question mark that we need to look at, when is that Supreme Court final determination going to be? I don't know, but this indefinite adjournment, considering that you have 46 days to an election, can drag on because nobody really knows when it's going to end. But as you know, the key question that came up today when the Speaker sat, and one of the reasons he cited for adjourning the House indefinitely, is that when the House sat today, the minority side, as in the NDC side, had taken the majority seats, right? And the other side was empty. But the Speaker was clear that quorum, yes, there was quorum, because you only need 92 MPs in the House for the business of Parliament to proceed. However, you need far more if you want to take binding decisions. At least you need 138 MPs. And the question you need to ask yourself is, does the NDC side have 38 MPs? They do not. And so the Speaker says, well, we don't have a decision-making quorum. But I've heard also tonight that the reason why the Speaker said it is not because of this constitutional provision necessarily, but because the NDC themselves failed to bring the entire 136 members, minus the individual who has vacated his seat, to the floor. Because if you vacate those 4 seats, half of that number will be dividing 271 by 2. That brings you to 136, and they should have that. They should have that. But they didn't bring all of them to the House, and so they couldn't take decisions today. and they wanted to take a few decisions, including the election of the second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, the repeal of the e-levy, etc. And so the Speaker, that is the explanation I've heard from Roxanne Dafiamekpo, and that is why the Speaker, knowing the numbers, make this announcement. We'll see. A lot of this will be very clear as we proceed and approach the Supreme Court verdict. But a few big government business will be affected. One of them, obviously, is the approval of the 2025 budget that we know should come in November. You also see the revocation of this controversial LI, which is a subject of some significant controversy. As far as the Galamsey fight is concerned, it will also suffer. Remember, it is one of the reasons why Organized Labour decided to backtrack and pull back from a nationwide strike. That is going to obviously suffer because government has a perfect excuse anyway. Nothing happens, you can't blame us because Parliament is indefinitely suspended. That is going to suffer. Another key business that will suffer is 275 million that the government wanted approval for, that financial stability fund. This is key. It could have implications for this economy. We know that's a key point that will also suffer. And then we also know the approval of the 350 million tax waiver that government has been fighting for a long, long time. The trade minister in particular will also not happen because of this gridlock that we are talking about tonight. Nobody knows when Parliament is going to return, but even if it returns, with few days or weeks to an election, you can see every single thing will be contested, even if Parliament resumes on this particular matter. And then a big one. 2 Supreme Court justices have been nominated. Parliament will have to consider that. They too have been caught in this gridlock. They will also suffer. Their nominations may not even be considered. If this life, the Parliament's life expires, they will have to come afresh. Another president will have to consider whether the name should go back. And so this is desperate if indeed you are those 2 Supreme Court justices who've worked very hard and earned it for no fault of theirs. They'll have to be kept in limbo. So a few key things that goes to the question, why is this fight over minority-majority important? Because if you get majority, the NDC side gets a majority, they will do a few things. E-levy, they say they would scrap it. Betting tax, they'll remove it also. And so for the government, these are big handles in terms of bringing in revenue, especially if you're on an IMF program. So they need that, right? And that is why this is key.